Today, we are diving deep into a really cool moment in history. What happened to Indian architecture right after the fall of the legendary Mauryan Empire? This isn't just about buildings. It's a story of transformation, of incredible creativity, and of how new art can literally rise from the ashes of an old empire.
I mean, it's a great question, right? When a huge central power that's been running the show for ages just disappears, what happens? Does everything just grind to a halt? Or does it blossom into something new, maybe something even more interesting? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into.
All right, so picture this. It's around the 2nd century BC, and the massive Mauryan Empire has just collapsed. You'd think that would create a huge power vacuum, maybe even chaos. But instead, what we see is this new landscape of smaller, regional kingdoms starting to pop up and take its place. So with that central authority gone, power really started to spread out. Up in the north, you had dynasties like the Shungas and the Kushanas coming into their own, and down in the south and the west, you had the Satavahanas and others rising up. And here's the key part. Every single one of these new powers became a major patron of the arts, funding projects that showed off their own unique styles and beliefs. Now, what's so fascinating is that this wasn't just a political shakeup. Oh no, society itself was changing in a big way. Alongside established faiths like Buddhism and Jainism, you had these Brahminical faiths, dedicated to gods like Shiva and Vishnu, really starting to gain a lot of momentum. And you better believe this religious shift gets carved directly into the stone of the era. Okay, so let's jump into the first major architectural form we're going to look at, these incredible rock-cut caves. Now, caves themselves weren't brand new, but during this post-Mauryan time, they went through this massive evolution. They started serving new purposes and honestly just reached a whole new level of awesome. And this is where we see two really distinct types of caves emerge. On one hand, you have vihars. Think of these as monasteries or dorms for monks. They'd been around since the Mauryan era. But then a totally new type of space appears, the chaita. And this was a game changer because it was designed specifically as a hall for prayer. So what is a chaita hall? Well, it's basically a sacred space carved right out of solid rock. Just imagine this huge rectangular room, sometimes with an open courtyard out front. The whole thing was one big, beautiful space dedicated entirely to worship. And check this out. This shows the difference perfectly. Over on the left, you've got the chaitya at Karli. See that long, vaulted hall? That's built for group prayer. Now look to the right. That's a vihara. It's a multi-story building with all these little individual rooms for monks to live in. Two totally different functions and two totally different designs. Now, what really kicked things into high gear was royal money. With patronage from dynasties like the Satavahanas, these cave projects became absolutely monumental. Suddenly, artists had the funding to get way more ambitious, carving these magnificent, multi-storied structures straight out of the mountains. And this ambition led to some jaw-dropping new features. All of a sudden, we start seeing multi-level viharas. We're talking 2 stories at Karli and an unbelievable 3 stories at Ajanta. The entrances themselves became these incredible canvases for carvings of people, animals, and mythological figures. They literally brought the bare rock to life. All right, so we've talked caves. Let's switch gears to the other great architectural form of the period, the stupa. These secret mounds also went through a pretty dramatic transformation. They got way, way bigger and much more symbolic than anything seen in the Mauryan era. And the evolution here was huge. I mean, the stupas didn't just get bigger. Builders started using permanent stone instead of the older wood and brick. The surfaces themselves were covered in decoration. And maybe most strikingly, they started adding these incredibly elaborate gateways called torrens. And here you go, a perfect example. This is one of the torrens at the famous Sanchi Stupa, a signature feature really pushed by the Shunga dynasty. And you have to understand, these gateways weren't just entrances. They were monumental pieces of art in their own right, just covered in detailed carvings, telling all sorts of stories. But here's where it gets really interesting. If you look closely at some of the figures and patterns on these torrents, they actually show Hellenistic or Greek influence. And that is such a cool reminder that post-Mauryan India wasn't some isolated place. It was part of this vibrant, buzzing network of cultural exchange that stretched all the way across Asia. So let's bring it all together. The fall of the Mauryan Empire didn't signal the end of great art. Not at all. In fact, it kicked off this new, super dynamic era where all these regional powers used stone to express their own unique identities, their own beliefs. So, what's the big picture here? Well, the architecture just got grander and way more decorative. Stone became the go-to material, replacing wood and brick. This period gave us incredible new innovations, like the Chaitya Prayer Hall and the ornate Toran Gateway. And when you zoom out, the art from this era is this beautiful mix of powerful local traditions and fascinating ideas from the world beyond.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. When we look at these ancient caves and stupas, we're not just looking at old buildings. We are literally reading the story of a society in motion. Its politics, its religions, its connections to the wider world, all of it captured forever in stone. Kind of makes you wonder, what does our architecture today say about us?